Hey, we're in. Hey,
Rip,
hey,
hey,
Sir Lair. Hey, I think did we miss last week? Yeah, we missed last
we
week, didn't we?
did. Yeah, you
Yeah,
were you
and
were traveling and
I,
and
I was
training and
traveling. I was in
yeah.
Kansas City, Kansas City. There I was. Yep, I was like the song almost, but
Welcome, welcome.
opposite,
Well,
like the old man version, which is me. But yeah, I was there. I went there during the day, and I came back the same day. It was all uneventful. It was one of those kind of things where like, I can't play the lotto anymore because totally my car was all used
it
up
just
because everything was on time, all okay. Got there fine, nice weather, beautiful, everything all good. Got there. Not too many folks that were there because it was a hybrid conference, and
right.
this is what I'm beginning to see: the fact that hybrid is being offered more often than not, and maybe this was the case should I'm not sure if that was it's not the same as like in the case of Microsoft, but in this particular case, I think most of the people who attended were actually virtual.
Really
So because
interesting.
when we get there, it was more of an intimate group of people because when we had like lunchtime and like the folks that were in the session attending in person were there, and it was basically about what felt like 100, 200 people,
Nice.
which I think they were looking for a lot more originally because they wanted to have like a live the facilities could have handled easily three
Right.
or four times the amount of people. This particular school in Kansas City where they had it, I think they call it the Rest Conference Center in Oberlin, Kansas. We should look it up actually.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a KU, right? Kansas City, Kansas University.
Right.
I was very very impressed with their tech. This is like
Nice.
it's just like the seats themselves, like on all the chairs were like like you can pull them out to sit down and pull them in, and they
Right.
were like office level chairs, the kind with the nice soft
Oh,
backs and all
cushy.
that stuff.
Yeah.
There was plugs on every single piece over here. The wireless and the Wi-Fi was 1 gig and powerful all over the place.
Wow.
The setup for the daises and all that stuff was every freaking connection possible on there. They had cameras up on top so that and big screens here and there. I mean, the only thing they didn't have was perhaps the interactive whiteboard, but maybe that was the case, but nobody turned it on for me in this particular case. But this was like I was very impressed with this
Nice.
with these facilities, so it was really nice. And then of course, then they had lunch. It's like, oh well, we got pulled pork and barbecue. So and then you can realize, well, anywhere else that would have been like the so-called how do we say it, economical fare,
Right.
right? And this was economical fare for this conference, but this is Kansas City. This is Kansas, so it's
It's
like,
Kansas City. Yeah, I mean
oh,
that's barbecue
oh,
center.
it was like killer pork, killer beef. Everything was like so. I'm giving that one a plus rating on the food for a conference because it actually was better than Orlando. To not say it out loud, it was because just the,
Well,
just the quality of food.
Kansas City, St. Louis, Charlotte. There's Charlotte barbecue.
Oh
Texas.
yes,
There's
Austin,
uh,
Dallas, those places. Yeah, I mean,
it's
there's good eats to happen there.
yeah.
The one thing about hybrid that I do miss is, frankly, it is the food when it's good. When it's not, it makes you want to go remote. I'll tell you right now. And maybe for some
Uh,
people, it's like I'll never go get there again because let's just say, what they say. What happens in
or
Vegas should stay in Vegas. But if it
yeah.
comes with you, something you ate, more likely, right? I'll never go back there. Blah, blah. But in
Gosh.
this particular case, yes, I would absolutely go back, even for the day.
Speaking of Vegas, you were at the conference in Vegas with me, and I think it was 2012, right?
Yes.
We went to the SharePoint
We went to the SharePoint conference. That led to
conference out in Vegas.
certain accounts, big ones that
Yeah,
we ended up with, very very big ones. To
very
which, by the
nice.
way, a couple of those folks from that are now here in where I am in Capgemini Sajeti.
Nice.
I don't know if you remember. Well, we'll wax poetic about these
There you go.
these
There you go.
individuals later. But let's just say they haven't changed much at all, which is interesting. We have though. Well,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm still a little bit the same. What am I
Still,
wearing
yeah,
today?
still the same.
I
Yeah.
shaved at least. I shaved for
Well,
today. How about that?
now I'm in Brooklyn, so I've moved. But yeah, it's still the same. I'm still running the. I've got new guts in the computer, but I'm still running the same um, Cooler Master
There we
um,
go.
case that I got in like 2001.
Oh dear.
So I've been lugging this big aluminum tower case around. And
Is it being used for your Bitcoin mining at all by chance?
no, no,
Just
no. It's what I'm on right now. It's the one that I'm.
okay. I was gonna say it's like for every time we have a little bit of lag, it's like oh, you just struck gold in one of your mines.
No, all the Ethereum mining is dried up, right? Ethereum moved to proof of work.
So
I mean, excuse
yes,
me, proof of stake
there's
as
a
opposed to
topic
proof of work.
right now. Explain this to me. What? Because
Sure.
I could have been mining and all of a sudden what my miners just stop all of a
All of a
sudden on
sudden,
me.
it's not.
What exactly happened there?
So the way that mining that's proof of work works, if you will, there's a math equation,
Yes.
and you put an input in, and the output is unpredictable, right? You can't know in advance what the output's going to be,
Right.
and miners will continue to put in different inputs until they match a certain pattern. That's the idea, is that there's a pattern of bits that they match, and when they match, they take the previous block, or the next block, and
Mm-hmm.
this random input, and push it through this hash, and when the hash ends in a certain value, right, certain bit pattern, then
Yes.
that is considered mined. It is, you found a solution, and so
Mm.
then you submit that solution, other
Yes.
people test it, and that's proof of work, because that equation is big and complex and requires, um, for Ethereum, it was the DAG, the piece that you were having to use and bundle together with it all was over 3 GB.
Ooh.
So you had to have it all in a big GPU.
Right.
But now proof of work then is burning a lot of electricity. Now proof
Mm-hmm.
of stake is what Ethereum has changed over to, and in order to do that, you don't have to go through the mining. What you have to do is you have to basically place a bet. You have to say that, I'm staking this amount of money on the fact that I'm doing this correctly.
Ah.
Okay.
All
And
right.
and so if other people agree that you've done it correctly, then you gain a little bit of a payback based on the fact that you did the work correctly. If enough people say that no, you're trying to cheat or you're doing it incorrectly, then you can lose your stake.
Oh.
They'll
Okay.
take the money away, right?
So.
It's a penalty, and the idea is that um, you are being there's both a carrot and a stick. Okay, if you work correctly, you're going to get a little bit of money back. If you work incorrectly, then you're going to be penalized.
So, where's the incentive beside what is the penalty that makes you not want to do it incorrectly? Is that big enough to
Yeah.
disincentivize them? Okay.
Yes, it's significant. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
the idea then is that you no longer are having to do all of this work. You're no longer running as much electricity um, in on the network. And so right now, I think it's an insane amount of stake that's been put in place for the
Oh,
Ethereum. It's like 1.5 billion. I'll look it up and put a link.
right. But it's a
It's
bet. But it's a bet essentially. So you could lose the bet, but all you lose is what you bet.
right. Well, and you're not really. It's not really as much a bet. It's almost like it's bet is probably a bad term. So you're putting it in escrow, let's say.
Ah,
So
okay.
you're saying I promise to do good work. If I
Oh,
don't do good work, then they're
okay.
going to take it away.
Got it. All right. And so, I guess we have we can disincentivize them from not doing good work. And
Right.
what is the criteria for doing good work, essentially?
So so doing good work means that you have correctly attributed all of the transactions that are in the block that you're putting. So for 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 blockchain, each
Hmm.
block is a set of transactions,
Right.
and you reach a consensus,
Hmm.
and that means that that block is considered good and those transactions are done and gone through. Now, the reason that people would do bad, right? The reason that people would want to try to cheat, if you will, is because they could do multiple transactions off of the same money. So basically, it's like the shell game, right? They do two transactions off the same money and only decrement it once.
Oh, so like basically you're trying to like duplicate the effort and try to make the money on both when it's almost like voting twice or like getting the same ticket and trying to go into the movie theater with the same ticket maybe.
Right.
And but of course if they check the ticket and see, oh, this person's already in the movie, you can't go in. But if no one was checking, you know.
Then right. But that's why in the cloud there you have to reach consensus. You have to have other people that are doing the same work and coming to the same conclusions.
Conclusion.
And that's why when you send when you know send money through blockchain, through any of them really,
Hmm.
um, it's immediate, but it's not instantaneous.
Right, because it
Okay,
still has to be validated
it
essentially.
has to be validated, and in general, a certain number of blocks have to have been done after the block that contains your transaction for it to be considered locked.
So
Because
essentially,
there could
you
be
by
blocks.
yourself and you is not enough. That the whole point of the cloud is to cloud source essentially, crowdsource the these consensus groups, I guess.
Right, and
Right.
everyone agrees that the ledger, right, this distributed ledger, the 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 accounts and balances are good.
Got it.
And a transaction is really just moving something from one account to another account.
All right. So for them, because this it's altruistic to have to do it because someone has to give up resources to make this happen.
Yes.
So what they get in reward for doing good is Bitcoin, I suppose.
Yeah, is whatever,
That's
you
what
know,
they mine out of it essentially. They do this
right.
work. Well, it's I guess it doesn't feel like mining so much as it feels like freelancing a little
Yeah,
bit.
it is.
You
It's a
know,
lot like freelancing.
you're working.
And
I'm just like another worker in, and you find me a spot to work, and it's just a temp job totally because it's like once you're done, you go on to the next one if you continue doing it,
right.
and then you get your little stick out of it and move on essentially.
And speaking of Bitcoin, the transactions, the amount of compute that is currently being used to mine Bitcoins, right, to keep the ledger moving, has decreased dramatically since the price has decreased,
Oh,
the price of the Bitcoins, because
it's
it costs electricity, and so it's no longer profitable for some individuals.
right. So because demand with the demand down, the cost becomes more of a sticking point for a lot of
Right.
these folks. When
So
demand was high, the cost was worth it. I guess. Does that make
right. Well,
sense?
if you were to mine a Bitcoin when it was 40,000, you know, when it was running at $40,000 a coin,
Right.
then you would get $40,000
Wow.
for your mining
Yes,
efforts.
that's
If
right.
you mine a coin now, you'd only get around 20. And so how much effort does it take and how much does it cost you?
Got it.
And there are great equations out there that show you what your profitability is. And I looked honestly at mining um, the Ethereum Classic, which
Hmm.
is still doing proof of work. But when I was mining Ethereum and it was running, even when it was running at like $2,000 a coin, which it's roughly at now, um, I was making roughly $7 a day.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay,
because it's pennies on pennies basically that
right.
add up.
But Ethereum Classic, mining all day with the rig that I've got, I was making 24 cents
Oh, yeah. Okay.
because Ethereum Classic is currently around $20 a coin. So
Aha.
it just that won't pay my electricity bill.
That's true. I mean the electricity that you used for it
Right.
is so. Here's a question: Is your have you seen your electricity bill impacted by the act of mining?
Not really, because we've got so many other things that are going on, and I'm not a big miner. I mean, I was
Okay,
just mining on one card, and my
I
machine
see.
was on all the time anyway. So it's a negligible amount.
Oh, so that was
But
the idea. The idea was, and I think that's what they were counting on. It's like the people that leave their machines on there that are not using their, just like the way the cloud came up, right? We got
right,
resources, they're not being used. Let's rent some of it out, so that it gets used closer to capacity and make money
exactly.
on that. So in essence, that we were doing that in a baby scale,
Right.
except for
Well,
some people that went crazy and said, we're going to mine to mine. So they literally went out and created their own
well,
farms to
people
go mine.
people yeah, people built machines with, you know, 8 video cards specifically for mining. And,
Oh,
there's a lot of tech that's involved, Ethereum mining at that point. But there's a lot of tech involved in that, and there's some interesting things that you can do, and but yeah, that's all dried up for Ethereum.
that's all dried up right now. So, and again, because demand down, costs for things up at the same time. So it's a double whammy.
Double whammy. Yeah.
Wow, wow. So just a word of warning, as they say, to the folks that are out there. However, so it sounds like one of those kind of cases where like memories will be short. As soon as things turn around, people were forgotten what happened when they got burned last time, because I guess most of the people that got burned have moved on, but everyone else will be fresh and like, oh, money.
It'll be new. Yeah.
It'll be new again.
It's the
Ah,
housing bubble, right? I mean,
it is.
oh, I said the B word. Sorry. Yeah. You know, we both lived through that in
We
the
lived through the bubbles,
2000s, and now we're
somebody turned on the bubble machine on us. Yes, why
yes,
not?
yes.
All right. So it's interesting because we avoided the talk of Ralph's money in context of all of this, and it's a good thing that I wasn't mining, because then I would be like right now poorer, I guess, if I was
Yes.
continuing to mine and on top of all the stuff that was going on. But
Well,
one
and
day
it's
though, we as they say, you look at the long term, we're hoping that things do happen, but it may not. There's
may
been
not.
cases where commodities in general, and this is true in any of the markets, where something never recovers. Like, well, like people say with stocks and like
Right.
401ks and all that stuff. If you wait long enough, eventually things will catch up and you'll get going. That's all fine and well, but there are individual companies and all that stuff that may no longer exist. If you're
That's
doing
right.
that in funds where it's already grouped and that fund's content might change, you're
Right.
not touching it, that's out of your hands. Yes, then we can say that happens. But if you're the one who's actually individually selecting the individual players, well, you're at a higher risk, because that guy can go and be
Yeah.
gone for good, and
Yeah.
that's it. There's nothing that's going to fill that hole at all unless you find
Diversification
someone.
is
Exactly.
key. Well, and it's weird, and we're not talking cloud right now,
That's
but
true.
it's kind of interesting and good to talk about, because there are companies that give you the chance to buy stock in them if you work for them.
True enough.
And I've never been a proponent of that personally, because that's putting all of your eggs in one basket,
Well,
right?
assuming that is all your eggs, it's almost like
Well,
when if you're taking a piece of your salary to pay into it, it is
right,
like what it's like you have your 401k, or you have your mutual funds over here, and you have that your specials over there, but you're taking some of that money, which would have been potentially spread out,
right,
and making a bet on
right.
that
On the
company.
company that you're currently working for, and if that company goes under, you both lose your job and you lose your savings,
And you'll lose your exactly
if
right.
that's the only thing that you're
If
putting
that's
your
the
money in.
only thing that you're putting your money in, this is
Yeah.
exactly right. So this is the case of the percentage. You look at your risk. What's your risk tolerance, as they say? The same thing like anything else, because
Yes.
just as easy as it putting into your own company, you could just go to the stock market just willy nilly. Open up an account with Charles or somebody, and then just go ahead and buy a stock, and then watch it, and
Yeah.
then join the hair club like us later on, and just watch the individual trials and tribulations of the stock, when they tell you don't look at it during the day, but you can't help but look. You're like, no,
Can't
I
help
don't
but
want to
look.
look.
Yeah.
Especially these days, in the moment. Same thing. The thing though with the companies, like, well, obviously, if you don't believe in your company, why are you working
Why are
for
you
it?
working there?
Silly,
Yeah.
right? That might be the thing to think
Well,
about. It's like, well, you're
then
working here because
again,
you need a job. You're okay. And you know what? I love my company, but I don't trust them exactly.
well,
Could be.
I've worked for a startup, and I personally worked hard to get paid a premium because there was risk involved in taking that job.
Yes, there we
And
go.
And so it's all built in. All that's built in. And I guess to kind of bring us back to stock, I mean
Yes.
back to the cloud rather,
Back to the cloud.
off of stock,
Yes.
back to the cloud. One of the things that I noticed recently in the Azure, and in fact, we went through it a little bit last time.
Yes, we
They
did.
talked about the spot prices
Yes.
and how you can lock in resources, and that's you basically placing a bet
Yes.
on the amount of resources that you're going to use. You get them at a lower price,
Mm-hmm.
but you have locked yourself into basically a leased
So,
resource.
yes, we talked about this. This is the key to SaaS is what this is all about. The
Yes.
key to SaaS is like, hey, look, if you have to pay as you go, which what everyone seems to say, well, couldn't we just pay as you go or just get what we need? It's like,
Yes.
yeah, but you have to pay a premium for that. If you want to
Yes.
have that as you go, if you want it a la carte, as they say, or you want it on demand, you pay the premium. If you reserve something, if you time is money, right? So opportunity costs and everything else. If you reserve something, a year in the future, well, I don't know if I might use it or not. However, because you're reserving it now, I'm going to say, you know what? I'll take your money now. I don't know what's going to be like for me a year from now, so I'm going to take your money now. I'll take less of what I would have taken on that time. And it's the
Right.
same thing. Why are airfare sometimes cheaper, like a lot earlier than, and as you get closer, it gets much more expensive, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden the price drops for whatever reason. It's supply and demand, but you have no control over it. Again, reserving. And I used to remember this with airlines a long time ago. They used to have that where you could sort of like pre-book fares and all for those people that were really frequent travelers and doing all that
Right.
stuff. They stopped that though because the airlines realized, you know what, people are winning those bets way too more than
Way
us
too
because
often.
they wanted to make the bet that we're going to give you a cheaper fare, all right,
Yes.
so that you'll buy the tickets now. We'll feel better. Then the airline said, no, we don't feel better at all because people are getting them and they're getting those cheaper fares, and we could be charging a lot more. And they said,
Yeah.
we're going to go back and we're going to remove that ability from folks. And so you got to wait and buy it like everyone else. You can't go into the open market and buy a ticket and resell it. They didn't make it easy. This is why, also, by the way, when you go to a travel agent, you can't use your mileage cards or
Miles.
anything like that. So they said, "Oh, we're not going to give you miles if you're going to come to this hotel and you have like say a rewards program with us. You can't
Right.
use your rewards program because you booked through those folks. We gave a discount already. So, well,
Right.
that's their excuse right off the bat. But in truth, the whole point is that was that's their hedge. So
Yes.
everyone will have a hedge. It's how much hedge you want to go. And what they don't want to do is they have too much of what those booking programs had before, where people were buying a lot of the hedge and say, wait a minute, that hedge is too heavy. We're hedging now. Now we're there's a financial term for it. I'm not sure what it was called, upside down butterfly or something like that. It was the case of like too much hedge and you're
Right.
losing money. It's like, hey, but you're
The
hedged
tail
against everything.
wagging the dog.
I bought too much hedge. I got
Right.
way too much hedge, and my value is gone because essentially I paid high premiums, and now I look at it. Where's my profit? It's gone completely. You hedged yourself to death, and it's
So
just too much.
for those in the cloud, right?
Yes.
What 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 we're really, I think, both saying and wanting to get you to is think about your long term, project, and you can always buy a base amount and do sort of a hybrid where you've got a base amount that you pre-bought and then you pay
Yes.
as you go above that, and that
Yes.
handles your that lets you get kind of the best of both worlds and
It, so
not be in.
interesting planning. I think all the cloud services allow for this now, where you can go in
Yes.
and you can negotiate your blocks. And if there's not already, actually, we were looking, we saw that there were some system that you can actually do that right out of the box. Just like click the
Right.
box and then you've already made that pre-rule. But I do know that just in general, if you have a bigger picture that's going on, it's just planning tips. Planning tips
Planning
for
tips.
planning tips. You basically can look at that stuff ahead of time. Well, here's the key: how can you plan if you don't know what's going to be something? Well, I think I might use more. I think I might use less. Well, how do you make these decisions? This is by the way, my talk next week.
Yes.
M365 Chicago. So no session next week because all day M365Chicago.com. Please register. And remember, it's free. And if you don't show up, don't worry. It means you might still get on the swag or perhaps prize train by registering. And then if you feel like attending a session, you can attend a session. I'm giving my marketing. Get all the people. It's community. It's free. get out there. But my talk next week is about something I do only for clients usually, but I get to do in the community, which is talk about this concept of metrics, the idea of like, well, how do you measure something? How do you measure success in doing something? In my case, the Power Platform, picking that one in particular. And the idea is to have a metric. It's like, well, what metric? Well, okay, what are the two big ones, right? Time. How much time did you save? How much time did you lose? Money. How much money did you save? How much money did you lose? Well, where's the money come in? All right, it could be like the hourly rate of individual doing that work, right?
Yes.
So that's both time and money happening at the same time. But what if it's just money? It's like, well, I had to pay for this, maybe pay for this service, because I didn't automate it or I didn't do this, versus like maybe I'm paying only this for, say, the Power Platform license, versus I had to pay for that third-party service, which is blah, blah, blah a month. Which one is cheaper because I'm doing this across many people? That's an example. So there's money. The case of time could be, again, the amount of time somebody like it takes me like to do a manual form validation, 2 hours of a person's time, right? And we don't know how much they cost because they're on salary and we're not really tracking that. We should, but okay, let's pretend we're not. All right, but it's still 2 hours at a time. And if you save that many hours at a time, and let's look at the company as a whole, how much is all the salary pieces, and dump it in there, you can come up with your numbers. But why do we do this? The idea is if you want to show that you've made some progress, it's the same reason why we have meters in our cars.
Well,
There's got to be feedback, right? There's got to be dials. It's like, how fast are you going? How do you know you're not breaking the speed limit if you don't have something that tells you? You can't, like, are you going to have to count the trees every time? There's like 1,000, 2, 1,000. Do the math, or let something tell you. For that matter, I want to know if I made it. Have I made it to my destination? Well, your destination was 100 miles. Your little mileage thing, counter counts up, and it's like, well, 100 miles, I should have reached my destination if I had followed the right direction. And I look up, yep, there it is. It's 100 miles. There it is. I got here in the time estimate of this time. Blah, 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 success. Now I can go to the person and said, I promise you I'd be here at this time, by this time, and all that stuff. And yes, earn reward. The whole point of that is not so much to reward yourself, but also to show others.
Right. And well, and if you want to get a little meta, if you want to get a little bit further back,
yes,
then you start looking at opportunity cost. Then you start looking at, well, okay, I understand that the person that I have doing this, well, I mean, it's like changing your own oil.
Yes, that's right.
Let's get back to that, because back when I was young, I changed my own oil, and I did it because it was cheaper for me, and I had.
And you're a crazy man. You like to stick your fingers in engines. Go ahead.
But as I got older, right, and my bill rate and the amount of time that I had to allocate for things like that got smaller and smaller. It quickly became cheaper, in my mind at least, for me to do it because of the opportunity cost. There's a company that I worked for in the past that in the midst of all of their stuff, they have a mainframe that's still running. Okay, I won't say the name of the company, but they manufacture computers, and it wasn't their mainframe. It was one of their competitors' mainframes, but they never replaced it. And I doubt if they've replaced it yet, because it would cost $4 million to replace, and they could use that $4 million to put out new products and make money. So the opportunity cost.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't about the just raw numbers. When you're running large businesses, you have to look at beyond just that first level.
Here's the thing, though. They did the math and they made a calculation. This is different because we've run into people that say, "Oh, we're not doing that because it costs too much." So tell us, how much did you think it was going to cost, or not? Forget what you think. How much did you calculate it was going to cost? It's like, well, I know it's expensive. It's just luxury. A case in point, Azure Synapse. Oh, it's really expensive to use. It's like, okay, because everyone hears the anecdote that this is a premium-y type thing and it costs a lot of money. It's like, well, okay, how much are you spending now? Well, not quite sure. If they can't answer how much they're spending now, or maybe they're spending cheap. It's like, well, okay, you need to you're spending cheap. You think you're spending what you think you're spending. You know you need something. You're not going to do Synapse because it's too expensive. But wait a minute. Why did you even ask to think about that? It's because what you're doing, something is not working. Something's broken, or something is costing you, whatever that's costing you to run it. Something else on top is costing you because of the pain of running it that way. So now we're going to say, maybe bring up something like Synapse and says it's going to solve this problem. Oh, but that cost might be higher than what the pain is what you're telling me. Well, really, did you actually calculate it out? Did you do a POC? Did you open up the Azure calculator at least, and then run some numbers and say, okay, if I did it this way and this was my volume, and sometimes I say, oh, I couldn't do it because I didn't have the information I needed to make the calculation. So, well, stop there. And this is actually part of my talk. If you're going to measure something, firstly, you need something to measure. If you say, well, I want to save something, so I'll know I'm doing good. Well, what is that something? I'm saving the time. Whose time? I'm saving the time of people. What people? Who are they? How much do they cost? Are they managers? Are they this kind? And so, well, I'm not sure who might be using it. Well, stop, answer that question first so that we have that specific. Because if you're not, all you're doing is the same thing you did before. So I'm guessing it might be a lot because maybe managers or regular people might use them. And yeah, the managers cost a lot of money, but I'm not sure how much they're going to use the system. Is it 20% of the time? Is it 30? Is it all the time? Well, they might like it and say, well, they might. You're adding all these subjective terms. The idea is to objectify it as much as possible. We do assessments for different things, and we try to give it down to a number. It's like, well, but that number is a case of like somebody checking the I feel good, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's true. But when I say yes and no, guess what that is? It's a value, 1 and 0. I can now total up my yes, no's, and if I give them weights, like maybe this one is 20% more important than that. Well, look, I'm making the math complicated already. I add all that stuff, but in the end, I'll actually have a number, and we can call it the Ralph factorial, whatever. There's the Ralph factorial. What's your Ralph factorial on this? It's 20. What's the Ralph factorial on that? It's 50. Well, you succeeded. You didn't succeed based on the factorial, but that's like just a made-up number. Well, but it's a made-up number that you actually set your point of reference, and it can tell you that you made this happen because you agreed that these were the parameters that were going to move you, that you feel makes a difference, and these are what they weigh. That's all there is to it.
Well, and it's even if the number's wrong. Okay, let's say, hey, we don't think this number's right. Well, how right do you think it is? Well, we think it's about half right. Awesome. That's great. Then it's still a number that was arrived at through a scientific method that we can test it against later.
Correct.
And even if it's only half right, if you see an increase, then that's good.
That's right.
I mean,
you have something to observe. That's right. Yes. So here's the thing. What you're giving me is like, well, I don't think it should be that. It should be this. Okay, let's measure it. Let's test it. But if you don't have a number, the idea, again, if you don't have actual parameters, how can I test it? Right? If you're saying, well, it should feel good. How do I test the feeling? I can't open up a brain and said, he's lying to me. It's not going to happen. However, I can go to a meter somewhere, an IoT device that did something, a check mark, I can count, X number of files came through, throughputs, whatever. I can actually look at that number. Okay, let's test the theory. According to this, we received the underlying number that led to this. Here they are. And you said only half of it should have been. Right? This is an instant audit right off the bat that says your half is not correct. If we looked at it, well, this number came out this way, but somehow you're correct. It was half. It's like, what was the problem? Oh,
where's the problem?
The math was wrong.
Now we iterate.
You reiterate. You find out that, the way it came up to that is because it gave too much weight to this over here, but I'm only giving this much weight to that. It's like, well, this base number was right, but it only should have accounted for 20% and not 60% like that guy's counting. You've corrected your stuff, but you could not even get there until you had the raw to begin with.
There's a math, a statistics term of Pareto optimization. We do it all the time in our heads.
Yes, we do in our heads.
So the problem that I always have with clients is what I think is best doesn't always match what they think is best. And it's not that we're disagreeing on the magnitude of the values. We're disagreeing on the weights that we're putting on those values.
Yes.
And that's what Pareto optimization is all about. It's assigning weights to, these things that we measure, and then based on those weights, determining which is best.
Yes. So
And
here, this is usually the first thing that goes wrong with a lot of folks making data points. I made 5 things I'm going to score, and I'm going to give them. If you answered A and all the in 5 of 6 of them, it's all great and well, or B on 5 or 6 of them. This is what it's the point values and all that stuff. And then you look at all the 5 points. It's like, well, okay, hold on a second. You've included things that are not as important to each other. Where?
right,
How do you? Are they equally important? The first assumption you're making is like when you have a list that's flat, everything in that list is equally important. But reality is probably not the
probably not.
case. Probably
That's
not the
right.
case. It's like, is there might be a nuance. Well, they're almost all equal. Okay, you just stop you right there. If 9 out of the 10 are equal, but that there's one that's not, I'm going to question your other 9 over here because you just
Right.
gave me one that's not. Hold on a second. What was that thing that made that one less than the others? Let's look at the other ones again. If I gave you like the eye chart, remember when you'd have to pick all the pieces? If I give you that, and chances are,
Better or worse? Better or
yeah,
worse?
are you going
Yeah.
to are you going to end up with like a ranking 1 to 10 is going to this, or will you have some that are actually equal? Because
Yes.
sometimes you'll go over like, yep, to me these are the same. I really don't see a difference. It is actually the same. But this is where the work comes in, and this is the
Yeah.
part
And
that a
it's
lot of people want to short circuit, right? It's like I just
and
don't want to do that.
even and I know you said it. Excuse me.
Yep,
You said rank them 1 to 10. We never do that either, right?
that's
Because
right.
as soon as you rank them, then you're saying that there's a gap between them that is the same for all of them, and it's not. It's
Yeah, so
no
even
one
that
to
is a
two is
gap.
not the
That's
same
right.
as 2 to 3. We
That's
have
right.
different gaps there. So really, we need some kind of a scatter plot, or we need
Good
some
catch. Exactly. So like I've
different
ranked them.
way of showing them, and
Right.
we'll even stay away from rank. Let's rank is bad. Rank is bad.
That's
What
right.
we're going to do is we're going to assign weights, and then we'll put them out and we'll run them through this formula, and based on those weights, we will get a total,
So,
and
yep,
that
math is
we
still
use there.
important, folks. It
Math is
does it,
important.
it does come into play. Now, if you look at the basic math for this, it frankly is really not that hard,
Mm,
right? Because as they say, just even
yeah,
a basic weight, and you'll have a better result than if you did nothing. Now, obviously, there are calculations that say, hey, when we're talking about this particular type of thing that we're observing, oh, I don't know, oil production, or say option pricing changes and all that stuff. There are studies that say this is what those weights should be based on all the data and the stats and all that stuff. So that's different. But if you're talking about what you're doing for yourself, just the simple weight, like this is 20% of that, 40% of that. It's not a rank. You can sort them, and then that'll
yes,
give you a rank. But that's just
right.
a sort. It's
It's a
only
sort,
purely organizational to say,
right?
okay, these guys are here versus there. So if you want to show them in the graph, you said what you said, scatter, right? Or
Yes.
I could take that scatter and sort it, and now it'll look like I have a curve and going in. And the question
Hmm.
is that curve mean anything to you? Is that meaningful or not? Because it may not be. Maybe it is a cloud of information. So I like where I see the thick piece of blob, that's what is important to me, not the high going
Yes.
like this.
Well,
Flat
and
looking high, blob looking 3D.
what's interesting and fun, especially across organizations, is when you find that you've got a bimodal distribution, right? You have more than one population that you've been treating as a single population,
Ah,
right?
yes.
IT department spends differently than the finance department, and they're spending on different things, and they're not the same. When you treat them the same, you're doing a disservice to both of them.
That's right. Exactly
So
right. And but say
it's
they might come out there on the data point, they'll show up on the same point. It's like, oh, they're
right.
doing the same thing. No, they're not. They're the value of what it is that they're doing, it has different impact right there. So
Yeah,
the third dimension, if you will, to give
yeah.
you that little cloudy piece of it. This is
Mhm.
why it's going the metaverse happening for that stuff is probably more important than you think. Just saying, when you want to, sometimes look at a chart flat like this, and all of a sudden someone does this to you, and spins it, and all of a sudden the
Spends it.
chart turns, and it looks like something else completely.
That's right.
Like those eyeball illusions. You look at it flat versus you look at it through the side, and then you put it flat. You see different views of it.
Well,
Same.
we're back to the old elephant, right? The blind man and the elephant. I
Yep.
mean, it if you're only looking at it from one side, if you're only looking at one set of numbers, if you're only, looking at it from one viewpoint. It's the reason that diversity in our workplace is great too, because we're seeing things from different sides, and so we're getting a
Yes.
better picture of it.
Agreed.
So
Wonderful stuff. Hey, we were able to wax poetic for 40
for a
minutes
while here, yeah,
on just this particular item alone. How
and
about it?
we've not gotten into any cloudy things.
No,
Oh
not
man,
exactly. These
it,
are all things that help us in the cloud. Let's put an
yeah,
underscore to it. They help us figure out what's going on in the cloud because in the end of the day, these core concepts is how we think in order for us to solve problems in
right,
the cloud. If we think of the cloud as a place where like it's beyond three-dimensional, the things that are looking out there, we have to plan it that way. We have to prepare it that way. And when we try to deep dive into something, this is what sort of like leads us in where we're going to dive. Otherwise, as I say, shallow. We don't know it's shallow. Dive in, hit your head. We don't hit our
well,
heads too often. We do
and
sometimes, but not too often because we follow the same patterns.
all of our people out there that are looking to do a cloud migration, right? Cloud migrations are a big thing. If you're only looking at one aspect, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you might not get to do the migration because you're not showing all of the value that you're gaining. Instead of
Exactly.
just saying, "Hey, we want to do a cloud migration so that we can get rid of our data centers." Well, that's a great that hey, awesome.
Right. But
If
that's
you're still
shouldn't be the
running
only
data
reason that you're
centers,
doing it. Exactly.
you're still running data centers, yeah, look to cloud, but that's not the only value that you gain from it.
Exactly.
And unless you put all of that value together, and unless you measure all of it and use it in that metric, then you're not going to be able to show
Yes.
the value that you've delivered, because you're delivering a lot more value than just getting rid of that data center.
Exactly, and that one's a key one. So, the idea is like, okay, you're getting rid of a data center. So, what's the consequence of the data going from here to there? Well, we saved that we don't have to pay for the data center. Okay, all fine and well. What happened to the people using the data? What happened to them? Um, they sort of complaining that they can't find their stuff. So, well, okay, so you sort of killed your point of the data center by creating more work for yourself, by losing stuff, by creating security risks, or whatever it happens to be. This is
Yeah.
where when you're missing the
Well,
pieces.
but when you move to the cloud, not only do you get out of that one data center, because a lot of small to medium companies just have really one data center, right? They've
That's
got the
true.
machines that they have on site. When you move from on-prem to the cloud, you also allow yourself to do geo-redundant, so that you're
Yes.
not, so that you have some disaster recovery in place, just out of the box without really costing you that much more, other than planning. So, I mean, look at all of that and bring all of that to the table when you go to your management and say, "I want to get us off of our local servers."
Right. So the tip from us is when you show value to what it is you're doing. Let's say the bosses pay. Oh,
Yes.
I got to give you see this picture behind me over there,
Yes, yes.
right there. This is me talking at Ignite. My talk that was there, enterprise productivity. I'm not sure. Did I mention this last time? But it was very interesting. So I polled the audience. Here's the thing: the way this was set up, all right,
Mhm.
was going to be a table talk. And it was going to be an intimate thing. We thought we were going to be in a room. There's going to be like 20 or so people in there. And instead of us presenting and talking to the people, we're going to get them to open up and tell us about what you like about enterprise productivity, what you think about it, how do you feel about it, what you'd like to know about it, that sort of stuff. And people will start, in their
Engaging.
intimate
Yeah.
area and engaging with each other. Well, this is like this particular setup that they gave us, the pods is what they call them. All they have right now is those on the sides over here, and they only put those later, are soundproofing walls because everyone was able to talk to each other. So they soundproof the walls. And now this is just a few tables up front. So there wasn't a round table, but a bunch of little couches and chairs and side tables and stuff. And
Yeah.
behind are people that go all the way back behind, going this way over here.
Right.
So there was like, instead of 20 people, it was like 70 or 80 that we counted
Oh,
that were interested. And the only reason why we
standing
counted is
room
because
only.
other people in my group over here went out and were checking and basically scanned badges to say, hey, are you actually attending this, or are you just standing in the hallway just like, being deer in the headlights? No, I'm actually listening to that guy over there. Okay. Because he's loud,
Right.
I'm Ralph, I'm loud. So they were taking the badges. I know they scanned at least 70 plus badges. Okay, great.
Wow.
So badges, because we need those stinking badges. We got them. All right. So here was the interesting thing. I know I can't make them talk because this is like having AA in the park. You know,
Right.
Alcoholics Anonymous, and in the park where there's drunks walking around. Yeah, right. We're going to tell you about our problems and share. While all this stuff is going on, first you're going to get the heckler drunk guys like, yeah, stop drinking since whatever. Yeah, that's what these guys right need. More importantly, these are folks that are likely from competitors.
Right.
And they're not going to come on and say, so what do you guys do to enhance
Dirty
your
laundry.
productivity?
No.
I'm not going to spread dirty laundry or tell anyone else what I'm doing right either.
You don't want to show the bad or the good. Because,
or the good. So I have to keep, so I had to like really, how do I engage them? Because the feedback form says, did you engage and talk about the table topic? We're all going to fail because nobody's talking. How do I get them to still talk? So I had to be creative and come up with that way of talking. But so the first thing I did was poll them. It's like, okay, tell me of this group over here. We're talking about enterprise productivity is what the topic is and how you make it better and use low code to make it happen. And so I said, how many are in IT? And you see where I'm sitting, almost
Right.
all the folks in front were all IT, and they all looked like ready for battle. Some of them already had frowns on their faces, like, looks like they're going to do battle. Yeah, I've been hearing about this productivity thing, and they're ready to fight. It's like there they are. Some of them look happy looking. It's like, oh, you're the person that probably is not going to have a job next week because you're too nice. No, just kidding. You're the IT guy that wants to say yes so badly that he wants to say yes so badly that he might give away too much, perhaps. Okay, fine, but still, the bulk was IT here. All right, and so I said, okay, all right, who are the business people? The folks that pay the bills and everything else. And right behind that big group was a band. I swear, a band of people like this. The business people, and they all raised their hands, and they were like standing right over here. So I said, okay, where the developers, the ones who do DevOps and all that stuff. Behind them, some people raised their hands, and just like a few of them, they're like behind all those people. So I said, wait a minute, this is an interesting microcosm. Here, this is like every company I have to deal with for productivity. The IT people are up and running, ready to make this happen, operationalize, ready to fight you. The business people standing between them and the devs. Right. Isn't that always the case? They're always standing between them and the devs. They're standing between them. Those are the people with hey, they can build and fix your stuff. They're standing behind there. Here's the business people standing between you, and here's me trying to present, and I have to get past you first, IT, in order to go forward. And I said, okay, interesting, like, because you know what, our tactic and talk about productivity, it's governance. Governance is the way to grease the wheels to make you productive. What? Governance can make you productive? Wait a minute, doesn't governance clamp everything down? No, governance actually opens you up. Why? Because the idea is like, if IT here is happy that everyone can go and be the Wild West, and then no, I don't have to worry about the kids. It's like saying the kid is safe in the safe room. Right? And they can bounce on the walls. They won't hurt themselves. They won't fall down and everything else. IT is like, yes, let them play. That's governance to me in this particular case. And of course, now the business people can say, okay, I see IT is doing their job and everything else. And you need something IT? Okay, fine. We will perhaps allow this developer maybe to do something for you. How much you got? Okay, business people, right?
Yeah.
The microcosm right over there. I just thought that was very interesting on how that came about. But yeah, so when I bring that one up before we head off into the back into the cloud. Yes.
Well, it was wonderful. I'm sorry that we're not going to get to do it next week, but then again,
next week, come see us at m365chicago.com. You might find me there.
We have a better place to go.
Yes, attend it in person, so you can be there live to talk with the people on Teams. Normally behind the paywall. This is free. Come in free. And then we'll follow up on the next week. And I don't know, maybe we'll have a guest. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, all right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Don't be scared.
Thank you.